Thank you for joining me this morning on my morning walk in the forests of Germany. And it's slightly chilly and a little bit of drizzling going on, slight rain. In other words, the weather is perfect, especially for walking right now. And I hope the sounds are not going to be too distracting. It should mostly be nature sounds, so that might even be nice. And this morning I'm thinking about what our ancient Stoic philosopher friend Seneca has to say about the shortness of life and how we spend it. He says, it's not that life is short, it's that we waste so much of it. And we hear a lot about how life is just short and there's nothing we can do much about it, but it is also important to realize how much shorter we make it. But regardless, I take the measure of a life well lived, of a mind at peace with itself, and of spiritual progress, if you will, as directly correlated to one's ability to spend time by oneself. It's a direct measure of your health of mind and again of spiritual progress, how much time you can spend with yourself and be at ease. Because with whom in life do you have to spend more time than with yourself? And if one cannot be by oneself, one can also not be with oneself. And what's worse than that? What's sadder than a person not being able to spend time with the one person that they're bound to as long as they live, which is the self? What better thing can we do for ourselves than to become comfortable with that very person? And not only comfortable, with so much more. And as Seneca also advises, the one and only way to do that, to get in touch with that person, and to be able to not only stand that person, but love that person, and to really become also the self that you want to become. The first and foremost condition, the first thing to do, and the biggest thing to do, and the most integral thing to do, is to remove oneself from the crowd. You need to remove yourself from the crowd. And the crowd does not only consist of people, because sure, people have a lot of influence on us and they have big effects on us. But there's so many other things, especially in our time. We used to maybe be able to say that if we were away from people, we were away from their influence, we were away from their ideas, largely. But nowadays one can never leave the house, but through the phone, through the TV, through whatever, be constantly distracted and most importantly, constantly be influenced by ideas which are just as much time wasters and negative and harmful to the mission of getting in touch with oneself as anything else is. And so to remove oneself from the crowd means to give oneself the space and time required for anyone. No one can do this without this. This is not a crutch or anything. This is how anyone who's ever done it must have done it. It's to give oneself the space and time to first of all get away from everything, and then to re-examine everything that was there before. And I know it's uncomfortable to be with one's own mind, and the thoughts that come up can be scary, they can be uncomfortable, they can be anxiety inducing, and that's right. But those thoughts, the person that you meet there, the ideas that you see there, the things that you're confronted with there, are the real you. You are not who you are when you're distracted, when you're with other people, especially other people who do not challenge you on things, who are themselves only looking for distractions. And also there are so many societal norms that we are naturally pressured to adopt and to live by, that we can't realize that they're actually not good for us, that we're just doing things because that's how they're done. And to remove yourself from the crowd is getting away from that too. And so it is that whenever there's no distraction, whenever there's nothing to do, whenever it happens, those few moments where we just can't think of how to distract ourselves, something from the past perhaps comes up, and we feel anxiety, and so we escape. Or something from the future comes up, and it feels overwhelming, and so we escape. Or even in the present, the emptiness, the not knowing who we are without those distractions, those people around us, that comes in, and we escape. And so that's why life feels so short, because we hardly inhabit any of it. We don't inhabit the present. We don't inhabit the present because there's something demanded of us and we feel not up to the task. We don't inhabit the past because there's anxiety in it, there's regret in it. And we don't inhabit the future because it feels overwhelming. All that is to come feels overwhelming. And if we hardly inhabit our lives, which consists of nothing else but the past, present, and the future, and present, most importantly, of course. If we hardly inhabit any of it, how can we live any of it? And if we hardly live any of it, how can we say that life should be longer, that it's short? If we don't make use of it, if we're constantly distracted and escaping the very domain that we're supposed to inhabit and call life, then of course we make life short, if not even non-existent. But the person who is at that high place where life's fortunes, life's circumstances, the missiles of fortune cannot strike them anymore, those people, when they not only can be by themselves, they enjoy being by themselves. They have their greatest insight, their best ideas, and their most comfortable, pleasurable times alive they have with themselves, because they can reminisce about things in the past rather than regret other things in the past. If there's a call to action right now, if something needs to be done, they feel ready and prepared because they have been spending time with themselves preparing for things and thinking about things. And they can think about the future and excitedly anticipate the things that are to come and not be overwhelmed by the things to come. And so they inhabit the past whenever they want to, the present whenever they want to or have to, and the future whenever they have to or want to. And so they completely fill out that domain, that only domain that we have to call life, to live, to inhabit. They take full possession of it, and they live it fully. But the only way to get to that, the only way to get to be a true, full inhabitant, liver of life, is not around those thoughts, is not around the mind that feels so overwhelming when we are with it. But to go through those things, the only way is through, truly. There's no other way. And every time it meets us, whenever we have to, because we hardly let it, when there's no distraction, no one around us, the phone's off for some reason. Whenever it meets us there, we go through the first exit. We leave it. We distract ourselves from what just happened, and we try to get as far away from it as possible. And so we never go through that, and so we never make progress, and so nothing ever gets better. And it's a string of distractions. That's the best we can do. But I know that the only reason why we can't go through it is because it feels like it's so much, it's too much. It's not possible, and we can't do it by ourselves. And maybe it doesn't even feel right. Maybe it feels like something one should escape from, but it really is not. And what we have to do is like any other training. It's like developing any other skill. To be in touch with oneself, to be comfortable, to truly inhabit one's life is a skill. It's a muscle. It needs training. It needs exercise. And the way we do that is simple. You might want to call it exposure therapy. Just deliberately give yourself that time and space. And this is exactly what it means to remove yourself from the crowd. It's to give yourself that time and space to be by yourself and with yourself, and to let whatever comes up come up, and to deal with it. Those things are there for a reason. They need to be processed, not evaded, not ignored, processed. And if you give yourself that space and time each day just a little longer, bring it all the way up to the point where you feel overwhelmed, where you feel too much anxiety, where you feel like it's just too much, and go just a little bit longer. And then leave it. I suppose go back to maybe your distractions. Give yourself a break. And whenever you feel ready, go there again, and a little further and a little further. And the best thing that I've ever found, which is an insight that I've gained from Marcus Aurelius' writing, but which is available to all of us, simply because we are humans. We have this ability to do, and every human is born with this, whether we use it or not, is to ask yourself, as Marcus Aurelius says, in any given situation, at any given moment, what is it that is so unbearable? Not in the future, not in the past, not in a little bit, not a little bit ago, right now, in this very moment. What is so unbearable? And he says, you'll be ashamed of the answer. And you won't be able to give an answer. You'll just, I think it will make you realize, as it did me, as it did many other people, I'm sure, we say there is no answer, because there is nothing so unbearable right now. And I realize that. And it just evaporates that overwhelmed feeling. You say, yeah, maybe this thing that I'm thinking about in the future that will happen, and it's so overwhelming and I feel so unprepared, maybe it for sure will happen. I mean, maybe we're talking about death, mortality, not just our own, but other people's mortality. That's a certainty. That is going to happen. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with being overwhelmed with that. But it's not happening now. Whenever it will happen, it will happen. There's no getting around it. But it's not now. It's not now. And you can use that to bring yourself from those overwhelming thoughts, all those things in the future that you feel like are coming and are going to be so overwhelming, you feel so unprepared for them. Dwell in that a little bit, again, as much as you can take it. And then to bring yourself back out of that overwhelmed feeling, and to finish your training for the day, and to record your progress for the day, use this. Ask yourself, what of this is happening right now? What of this do I need to deal with right now? It asks nothing of me right now. This isn't the future. And if at all, I mean, if we're talking about things like death, yeah, those are certainties. But there's so many other things, if not most of the things that we do feel that way about, overwhelmed and all that. There's things that are probably not even going to happen. And if they do happen, they probably won't happen to that degree. And so we stress ourselves out, we overload ourselves, we overwhelm ourselves, and keep ourselves from inhabiting the one space that we have to live, which is the now, and partially, of course, the past and the present, if we take our mind there. And this is an exercise, again, given to you by Marcus Aurelius. You can be grateful to him for that, as with many other things. This is really very doable, and it's a reality, and it's the biggest pleasure. And you can do it. Anyone who's human can do it. This is the work of life, part of it. This is what we're here to achieve. Because look at all those people who waste their time with distractions and who resent being in the present, who resent the past and the future somehow. How much time they waste, how little of their life they inhabit, and directly or indirectly, how much of others people's time they waste and how much they drag them into it. Because people who are not, seeing in this, accepting of this, knowing of this, believing in this, it's so easy to drag people, those kind of people, in with your own wasting of time and distractions. It's only people who've sort of, seen the light in that way, who are resolved, who are strong, who can't be dragged into that anymore. But until then, it's so easy. And it's so difficult to stay away from that. And so if you become someone who does fully inhabit their life, and who is entirely comfortable with themselves, and who does not use other people just for their own distraction, just to get away from their own thoughts, and be sort of an empty person also because they're so away from their own thoughts, how beneficial you become to others. And the seemingly selfish act of removing yourself from the crowd is actually a very selfless act, and it's actually the highest social act. Because it is, of course, for oneself, because one has to be reformed oneself before they can help others. Only a free person can free another. Only a self-reliant person can really take best care of another. And so it starts within. It has to, and it has to all come from within. And then sort of spiral outwards to whomever you feel is deserving in that and who would really benefit from that. And so it is that we have to do this, not as a selfish act, not for some gain, not for anything other than for living our fullest human proper life, and the happiest life, and the most meaningful life, and the fullest life. So remove yourself from the crowd, give yourself that space. Not only do you deserve it, but everyone that you would ever wanted to benefit, that you ever wanted to help in your life, deserves this. You're going to have this effect on so many uninitiated people to take that time and space for themselves and to become full people who inhabit their full life and not just little nooks and crannies of it in moments that they're not distracted. You're going to show them by example. Not to show them, but you are going to show them by example what a full, human, proper, beautiful, pleasurable, meaningful life can and should look like. All right, this is just your food for thought for today, for this week. I hope you think about it some and hope you apply it. It really does have the greatest of benefits. And for those still watching, to get into some a little more profane matters, some updates, I have finally given in and created a podcast out of the audio versions of many of these videos. And it's an ongoing process, of course. I'm realizing now that the podcast audience and the YouTube audience, there's not a lot of overlap. And if you know people who are podcast people and not YouTube people, and who you want to come in contact with these kind of ideas, then you can send them the podcast version of it, I suppose. So you can find it anywhere where you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever. It's on most things, and again, it's an ongoing process. It will expand. Another update is that there is also finally an Instagram account. I thought, why not? Well, at least it's worth trying. We'll see. It might be a good place for updates, and just if you want to know what I'm up to, what I'm going to be up to, what I have been up to, you can check in there. And there might be some content that's on there. I can't believe I just said content. But might be some things on there that are just not on YouTube or on the podcast, etc. So you can check out that. And those are my updates, and those are my food for thought that I wanted to relay to you today. And I'll talk to you again soon.